Welcome back to another episode of Jacket Sports Weekly, talking all things Waynesburg sports here in the fall of 2022. I'm Austin Bechtold, joined alongside my good friend Brock Owens. Brock, always a pleasure. First time I'm back with you here on JSW for the school year.
Absolutely. First JSW of the school year. I'm ready to get back into these Jacket sports.
So let's get right into it. The football team played the home opener over the weekend against Case Western Reserve, coming up short 45-31. It was a game that went down to the very end. Waynesburg did have a chance to be able to tie it, but Case Western scoring a touchdown in the last minute of the game. But special teams is what especially crushed the Yellow Jackets throughout the whole entire game, giving Case Western Reserve great field position to be able to strike.
Yeah, there was great kick returns throughout much of the game. The kicker, Keegan Robbie, had to make 2 tackles on kickoffs as well, and one of them being a really, really good hit on the return man. So that's just not what you want. If your kicker's making the tackle on a kickoff, that's like your last resort most of the time. So they did lose coverage a little bit there and gave Case Western some pretty good field position to start most of their drives.
We saw Dakota Romantino and Tyler Raines hook up on multiple different occasions. 7 receptions for Romantino for 104 total yards as well as a touchdown after not playing against Gallaudet in the first week. Raines, though, pretty solid, over 300 yards passing as well as 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 4 times, and the only sack that was given up that the Waynesburg defense was able to get against Drew Saxton was a sack by Joel Zellum in the red zone when Case Western Reserve was trying to score. But it was the only time that Waynesburg was able to control the pressure and control the point of attack against Saxton, when Case Western also, kind of oddly, played 3 different quarterbacks. And whenever they used those 3 quarterbacks, used more of a running style attack whenever Saxton was not in the game. And at times, it also threw the Waynesburg defense off its heels.
Yeah, Saxton is just a really good passer overall, so they used some other guys to just kind of mix it up, and there was one other pass thrown that wasn't Drew Saxton, and the Waynesburg defense just wasn't ready for it. It was a 70-yard touchdown, so they tried to mix it up a lot by putting in those running quarterbacks in, and on that one play specifically, it really tripped up the Waynesburg defense.
Right, there was a lot of confusion on that play as Noah Coyne ended up making the catch at about the 35-yard line, past 2 Waynesburg defenders, and once he got past the 30, there was nobody that was going to be able to touch him. The flag in the backfield, though, that was thrown on that play is why there was a lot of confusion as to what the call might have been, and was it going to be a penalty on Waynesburg for offsides? Was it a holding penalty, a formation penalty? Regardless of what it was, that ended up being a touchdown for Case Western. Now, on the ground, we saw Justin Flack have 15 carries, 80 yards rushing, as well as 2 touchdowns. 5.3 yards per carry for the senior running back out of Derry. What did you like out of Justin Flack? Because there were at times where he did have consistent running room, but in the middle parts of the game, there was just nothing and nowhere to go for Flack.
Yeah, I mean, overall, he was just really solid in his performance. 5.3 yards a carry is a really good performance for Justin Flack. And, that running game really getting going is kind of what sets up the pass. I think that's a lot of how Waynesburg wants to run its offense is let's run it, play action with Tyler Raines type of deal. So if they're being able to run the ball with Justin Flack, along with Nick Hall, and Cameron Hunter got 1 carry for 13 yards as well, and I'd like to see him get utilized a little bit more as well because he's a really solid running back. But Tyler Raines was able to open up the field and be able to go 25 for 37, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions behind that good running game.
Brendan Boron ended up leading the team with 10 tackles, and this is a game that was against a PAC team, but it does not count in the PAC standings. So with the addition of Allegheny as the 11th PAC team, the decision was made to make it 8 conference games for this 2022 season. So the next game against Geneva, which will be home, you can watch it on the Waynesburg University Sports Network, will be at 1 o'clock at John F. Wiley Stadium. And that game against Geneva will count for the PAC schedule. And it's a little bit of a twist, not having to play Case Western in a conference game, but going up against Geneva, what do you think the Yellow Jackets have to do especially to be able to get that win to go above 500?
Well, just simply something that they struggled with last year against Geneva is stopping that running game. Geneva loves to run the ball pretty much all the time with that triple option attack. Got to be ready for it.
Men's soccer was also in action during the week, and the team came up with a 5-0 victory at La Roche, that being on Thursday. 3-1 loss, though, at Penn State against Penn State Barron on Saturday. And the team against Defiance tied 1-1 on Sunday. That was in Alliance, Ohio. So overall for men's soccer, 2-2-1 with the tie thrown in there. So for this team coming up against Pitt Greensburg at home on Wednesday, we're going to try to break out of this rut that seems like a lot of Waynesburg sports right now are right around 500. Now, they have not played a lot of games. Football team only 2, men's soccer only 5 with a tie thrown in there. But so far for this team, we've seen multiple different goal scorers being able to put up 2 goals apiece. 3 players for the men's soccer team with 3 goals.
Absolutely, and that's what you want to see is in different games, different people stepping up to try and will your team to victory. And I like how this team started off because last year they were in a lot of games, they had a lot of close games, and they just lost it at the end. But so far they've been finishing pretty well. They're at 2-2-1, and they got Pitt Greensburg coming up, who's 1-2-1. So that's definitely a winnable game for them.
Samuel Hawkins, one of those players with 2 goals for the men's soccer team so far. And for women's soccer, how about 500? 2-1-1 for the women's soccer team. Also playing against La Roche, a 3-2 victory. That was on Tuesday. We've seen Grace Ingram, one of the main players that has put up a good amount of goals for this team, and Autumn Blair as well. So home against Mount Aloysius, also a 3-0 victory. That was on Saturday. Goals from multiple different players as Waynesburg's women's soccer team has been spreading the wealth.
Yeah, trying to get a little bit of a streak going. They've won the last 2 games against La Roche and then Mount Aloysius. They got a game again tomorrow against Pitt Greensburg, so they're trying to extend it, make it 3 games in a row. Let's see what happens.
After that, it'll be Saturday against Baldwin Wallace at 8 o'clock. Now, for the volleyball team, not as much success. Starting out the season 0-5, but picking up a victory 3-1 against Penn State Greater Allegheny by set victories of 28-26, 25-19 in the first 2 sets, dropping the third set 17-25 before pulling out a victory in the 4th set 25-20. And it's been all Alexis Marsh, 16 kills, 28 total digs for a team high. We've also seen Emma Hyatt with 13 kills. This team is able to start to potentially pick up momentum. There's no more Michaela Osborne, and especially no more Allison Johnson in the back row to be able to stabilize the passing attack.
Yeah, obviously Allison Johnson was a huge loss. She was one of the better players, or definitely up there with being a great player in Waynesburg volleyball for many years there. So that was a big loss. Volleyball had a great start to its season last year, so this year not so much of a great start. I want to see how they kind of come out of this. What's their perseverance like? And I think they'll get off to a little bit of a get rolling a little bit, I should say.
Waynesburg Golf is also in action with the women's team against Grove City at the Grove City Invitational, that being at 1 o'clock, and the men's team in the Grove City Invitational on Thursday. Coming up, Logan Lepiscopo will be joining us to break down the football team's loss to Case Western and preview the following matchup against Geneva. Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. The football team lost 45-31 in the home opener against Case Western in the home debut for Dr. Cornelius Coleman as head coach. Joining us now is Logan Lepiscopo, our football analyst, to break down what he saw in Saturday's game. Logan, great to be joining alongside of you. And what were your original thoughts once the game was over, your instant reaction to the football team's first loss?
Special teams is an issue. I think everybody that watched the game, whether we were in the truck producing, you're a fan, you're a player of the team, you know special teams was a big struggle. It seemed like Case Western was starting, whether it be in Waynesburg territory or very close after every kickoff, every punt, and it just resulted in great field positioning, which led to Case Western scoring drive after drive. And that's a completely different story from the Gallaudet game where we saw a huge defensive presence, a lot of turnovers created, punts forced, turnovers on downs, and just seemed like we were completely missing that in the game against Case Western.
Yeah, and you mentioned the defensive presence. There was only one sack for Waynesburg in this game. How important do you think the defensive side of the ball? We know the offense has been doing its job for the last two games. How much do you think the defense needs to be kind of stepping up to start going into this PAC schedule?
Well, they need to step up a lot. Like I said, two different tales of the tape from Gallaudet to Case Western. It seemed like the defense had all the answers to Gallaudet, but when it came to Case Western, it seemed like Drew Saxon was too much for them. So I think that creating turnovers, getting consistent pressure, and they played two different offenses. You look at the Gallaudet game, just 7 passing attempts, whereas Drew Saxton, he came in, and other quarterbacks came in, combined for 28 passing attempts. Two different offenses. You have Geneva coming up. They have a similar offense to Gallaudet where they like to hammer and run the ball over and over and over again. So they hopefully can show up against Geneva like they did against Gallaudet's running game.
So Tyler Raines back in the saddle as the quarterback of the football team after last year's season-ending injury. What have you seen from him in the first 2 games? Do you think that he's back on track so far, or do you think that he's still trying to shake off some of the rust?
I think he's better than where he left off last year. I mean, 5 touchdowns in the 2 games, 475 yards. His completion percentage is outstanding. But the big thing is no turnovers. He's been very careful with the football so far this season. We're only 2 games in. Turnovers are bound to happen eventually. But Tyler Raines has looked great. The running game picked up where it left off last year as well, with Nick Hall and Justin Flack being one of the best duos in the PAC. But Raines being that complete passer now, being much careful with his reads, I just think this offense has no problems. It's the defense coming in and consistently making stops to give the offense good field position.
Geneva hasn't won a game yet. They're 0-2 so far. What does Waynesburg need to do this Saturday to keep it that way?
You got to get pressure. You got to be able to stop this offense that Geneva runs year after year after year. The team is motivated. They're not happy about this 14-point loss to Case Western after a big win against Gallaudet. And they have a reminder of last season's score. They lost 49-3 against Geneva. But that 0-2 start for the Golden Tornadoes is going to be something that Waynesburg is looking at. They're staring at. They're not going to go into the game like Case Western. Okay, Case Western's 0-1. We stand a pretty good chance being we won our first game. They can't come in Geneva thinking that, oh, we're just going to run them over because they're 0-2. They got to come in, play hard football. They have to consistently make those defensive stops. And Tyler Raines and the offense just has to keep doing what they've been doing.
Logan Lepiscopo, our football analyst, joining us here on Jacket Sports Weekly. Logan, what do you think, if there's an area to pinpoint defensively in terms of the secondary or the linebackers or up front on the defensive line, what area needs to be the most improved as we go into the Geneva game?
It's tough to say because our defensive line had such a big presence against Gallaudet. They had 8 tackles for a loss, 5 fumbles forced in that game, whether it be just the defensive line or the whole secondary. And then you go to Case Western game, no sacks, just that 1 tackle for loss, which was a sack by Joel Zellum. It's hard to say, really, but if I had to, based off of the game against Case Western, I would have to say the defensive backs, the cornerbacks. I think they need to step up. I think that the awareness needs to be picked up a little bit there, but Jesse Kane has been incredible so far through the first couple games. And as well, Austin Durr, 10 tackles in game 1, 10 tackles in game 2. I think the linebacker group's looking good as well.
And Logan, one final question for you. As far as offensively, we talked about a lot the defense, but offensively, who are a couple of guys you're keeping your eye on to really get going for the Waynesburg offense to win this Geneva game?
I don't think really anybody needs to get going. I think people need to keep going. Dakota Romantino missed game 1 against Gallaudet. Obviously wasn't a huge deal the way Waynesburg came out and dominated. But then he comes in Case Western, 104 yards and a touchdown. You also have the younger receivers. You have Trout, you have Frischkorn. Those guys are going to continue to step up and make those plays because realistically, Roman Tino's not going to be open every single passing play. And these two receivers as well are going to be able to get open and exploit defenses. So I think those receivers need to continue doing what they're doing. Justin Flack, Nick Hall, they continue running the ball as hard as they've been doing the first two games.
Logan, thanks for joining us. Always appreciate it. When we return here on Jacket Sports Weekly, our executive producer of the Waynesburg University Sports Network, Jeremiah Miller, sat down with senior safety Jesse Kane to talk about his time with the football team.
Hello and welcome into the Waynesburg University Sports Network halftime show. I'm Jeremiah Miller, and joined with me today is star senior strong safety Jesse Kane. Jesse, thanks for taking time out of your day and joining me.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Jeremiah.
So, Jesse, let's get right into it. This past Saturday, big win at Gallaudet in Washington, D.C. First time you've been in action in over a year coming back from injury. Just tell me, what was it like to be back out there Saturday with your team?
It felt great. I mean, I've missed that it's been over a year with injury problems and just being back on the field. My mentality this season is whether I get one more play, one more snap, or I get 1,000 more snaps, I'm going to make that snap my very best. And so I take every single snap like it could be my last, and I feel like that's not only improved my play, but also mentally. I just feel locked in, and I feel like I'm confident with the ability of the team we have out there.
Yeah, speaking of your play, you had a game high at solo tackles, and also you had your first career interception.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What did you see on that play, Jesse, and what was going through your mind? You kind of bobbled a little bit, too. It wasn't a clean catch, but, hey, still counts on the stat sheet.
Yeah, so the interception, it was just a seam route coming up the field. We saw it so many times on film. We prepared for that exact play during practice. And I had a couple picks in practice. So leading up to it, I visualized that moment because that was a common play they had. And the QB, he didn't really see me there, so I ran up and caught it. I actually overran the ball. That's what made me bobble it. But still caught the ball, still got the turnover. I'm a little upset because I feel like it was on their side of the field. I feel like I could have maybe ran in and got a touchdown as well. But either way, it's a turnover and a big play.
Yeah, it was definitely a big play. 1 of 6 Waynesburg turnovers on the day. Also, Jesse, let's talk about, yes, you were injured all of last season, but you had a huge transformation over the offseason. You bulked up. You can tell you look at it. You just look like another man out there as compared to years past. Talk about the transition and also just what you did, your workout routine and everything this offseason.
Well, all of that's thanks to the coaching staff and the athletic trainers. They've been with me every step of the way. We've got this new we got this new strength coach, Coach Hoke. He actually was a player here, and he's really transformed me and some other players. But it's all about putting the work in, and that's what I did all summer. I was able to stay here over the summer with an internship, so I had the opportunity to be in the weight room, and I mean a lot of protein and eating healthy. You have no idea how far eating healthy will go, and I did. I put about 10 more pounds on. And I'd like to say it's all muscle, but that's not true. But I was still able to compete and be just as fast and in shape as I was before. So I just kept putting the weight on, and I kept tracking myself with my speed and conditioning.
Let's get to the classroom now. PRSSA president, first male president in a while, Jesse, for that department. Explain to the audience what PRSSA is, what it is here at Waynesburg, and what it is for you to be president and how that's going thus far.
Yeah, so PRSSA is the Public Relations Student Society of America. It's a club here on campus. It's on the 4th floor of Buell in the communication department. And I actually picked up a second major because of that club, and it's given me a lot of opportunities after graduation in fields where I wasn't even expecting to look at. I mean, there's so many different sectors to public relations, and they just deal with opportunities, and a lot of it can be crisis. But I'm looking to be more in the sports side of things with my other major in sports media. So something with sports public relations, it can range from working with a professional team and their social media to just dealing with press releases day to day. So I'm excited about that. The student club on campus, we work with a firm that is in town, and we work with the community, and there's a lot of opportunities to build your resume, just like everything on the 4th floor of Buell.
Yeah, now let's get back into your time before Waynesburg. A lot of people know, we kind of joke around with you about it, but kind of a big traveler, Jesse, in your youth. 7 years spent over in Europe. Talk about that, how it was, just the different cultures and what countries you did live in.
Yeah, so I lived 4 years in Belgium and 3 years in Germany. I was younger in Germany, but that's all because my father was in the military. He served 21 years in the Air Force. Very thankful for his service and just him as a father. He's taught me so many lessons. And it translates to football as well, because the military, there's a lot of discipline. Football, there's a lot of discipline. So my whole life, it's been structured around discipline. And yeah, I lived in Belgium and Germany. My favorite place to travel, though, was Italy. Italy is by far my favorite place I went to in Europe. The best food there, the pasta and pizza is undefeated. I mean, you can't even compare it to anything in America, because everything in America is so processed. The food is all natural and it's fresh. And I'll never forget my trips to Italy. I hope to make it back sometime.
I think I already know your answer, but I got to ask still, the best European food you had. I guess I'm assuming it's Italian?
It's the Italian food. Pasta, I just love pasta first off. Loved it before I went to Europe, but after Europe, pasta in Europe is by far the best.
All right, back to football now, Jesse. I know you're a big team player, but I got to ask you yourself, what are some personal goals that you have for your senior season?
So some personal goals, I'm a team captain, and so I just want to lead the team in a direction. We've really changed the culture here, and that's thankful to the leaders on the team, not just the captains. There's plenty of other leaders and upperclassmen, and we now have the tools to continue that culture. And so a lot of what we've said as captains and leaders is we just want to look back in a couple years and see those guys with the PAC rings, come back and talk. And it doesn't even have to be about us, how we had a winning season or we won so many games this senior year. It's just come back to the program and it's successful once again. It's Waynesburg football back to its prestige. So that's a goal of mine. Personally, I told Coach Sheridan, the DB coach, that I wanted to lead the team in tackles. And he was like, hopefully you don't do that, because that means the other guys in front of you aren't doing their job. But I'd still like to be around the ball every play. I'd like to have a turnover every game. So we'll see if I can continue that streak. But it's more important than just me. It's all about the team. And if the team has success and I'm just tagging along, I'll still be okay with that. As long as I'm playing football with these guys, nothing in life can be bad.
Yeah, another new part for this Waynesburg University team. New head coach Cornelius Coleman got his first win as head coach of Waynesburg this past Saturday in Washington, D.C. versus Gallaudet. And Jesse, what has the transition been like, and how is it thus far so far with not only Coach Coleman, but the whole new staff?
Yeah, so Coach Coleman's really brought in the staff as well, and some roles have changed on the staff. But ever since he first came to us, we found out he was our coach. We had a meeting. He talked about his goals and aspirations, not just for this upcoming season, but for the future of the program. And I bought in immediately. I would have bought in, even without that talk. But I believe that he really spoke to everyone, and everyone's goals really are in line, and everyone's bought into the same situation. And that's what we're going with. I mean, once you buy in, you got to be all in. There's no on the fence, half foot over, half foot on this side. It's got to be all in. And I believe that's what's really changed. The leadership's changed as well with the returners and the veterans on the team. They've really pushed the younger guys, because we have so many younger guys and younger guys from all over the place geographically. And so with that comes its own challenges. But we've dealt with it, and we're forming one unit, one team. And if you're with the team, and you have success, then it's going to be a great year.
Last question, Jesse. This is kind of a hard one. What does Jesse Kane want his legacy to be left here at Waynesburg, not only on the football field, but in the classroom and on this fourth floor of Buell?
Man, that's the toughest question, because that's the toughest question for me to answer just with life, period, because life's all about the legacy you leave. Honestly, that's the only thing you'll be remembered about you when you're gone. And so I want a legacy of leadership, definitely, within the communication department and just the campus community as a whole, but also in the football team. Coaches in the past have talked about football guys that, they might not have set records. I'd hope to set some records, and that would be a legacy. But just the way they went about it every single day at practice and during games. And I hope that someday Coach Coleman can talk about me that way with these other guys. And then, like I said before, just us returning these leaders, these captains, and this class, we return in a couple years, and we just see the program with success. And we don't have to be showboating about oh, we were the guys that did this. But deep down, we'll know we helped change the program and we've pushed them in the right direction, and Coach Coleman has done all the right things. So that would be part of the legacy I'd like to leave here at Waynesburg.
Well, I can speak as your friend that I think you are a great leader, and you know how I feel about you. I love you like a brother, and I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule and joining me today on our halftime show. And that's going to do it right here on the Waynesburg University Sports Network halftime show. We're going to get you back down to John F. Wiley momentarily for the game.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly, and now we're moving over to soccer, and we've got Micah Leith up here on the panel with us to discuss a little bit of men's soccer first. So Micah, thanks for joining us, and compared to last year for the men's soccer team, what do you think about them this year?
Well, Brock, we need to look back farther than last year. We're going to look back the past 4 years or so. The men's soccer team has been below average at best lately, but if you're a fan this year, there's a lot of things to be excited about. Waynesburg is really coming out of the gate. They've shown an ability to score goals while still being strong in the back. And a big key for me this season that we saw last year that was bad for the team was they conceded a lot of cheap goals last year. That really hasn't been the case this year. They haven't given up a lot of goals in the early 10 minutes of each game. And that's going to be a key moving forward to keep them in these games as the game progresses.
Last 3 games for Waynesburg, win, loss, tie, but scoring a goal in every single one of those games. Do you think that's a key that they need to consistently try to hit home on, or is there something else that catches your eye?
Well, scoring goals is always going to be the way you win games, obviously.
Well,
but the one thing that really hurt them last year was how many goals they conceded. Last year, in a lot of their losses, they scored at least 2 goals. And if you give up 2 goals, it's going to be difficult because you're not going to be in those close games where the other team's defense is really limiting your attack. So that's been a key so far this year. The Waynesburg's defense has really stepped up, and previously last year has probably been the first year that the Waynesburg defense wasn't the strong point of the team. Last year it was the offense, and now it really seems like they've been able to bring those 2 key components together to be successful in the early stages of the season.
They played La Roche last Thursday, and then they played a game Saturday and Sunday. So they played 3 games in 4 days. Do you think moving forward after getting a couple days off that fatigue might be any sort of factor when they play Pitt Greensburg on Wednesday?
Well, anytime you play 2 games early in the season back-to-back, fatigue is always going to be an issue. Your team isn't fully conditioned yet. They haven't played a lot of minutes. So that definitely played an impact, and having time to reassess, try and recover a little bit, and also work on some of the things they identified in those 2 games. That is going to be key moving forward.
Has there been any newcomers that you've noticed that has really taken charge in this early going? It's usually tougher for freshmen or transfers, whether it might be to be able to get established, especially this early on in the season. Has anybody like that done so, or in your opinion, do you think there's been somebody that's been more impressive as a most improved type of player?
Well, maybe not, I wouldn't say most improved, but one of the key returners from last year, Sam Hawkins, has been playing very well. 2 goals this year. He's also just been providing those chances in the attack. Even soccer is a sport where a lot of the key players may not necessarily show up on the stat lines. Creativity in the attack, being able to move the ball well, that's been key. So Sam has been able to finish the ball well. He's been able to be creative and create chances. Another returning player that's been huge for them is Logan Karate, who's for the past 2 or 3 years, he's been the workhorse of this Jackets defense and midfield. Been really the guy that they've been able to build around and bring new people into the program. A newcomer that we've seen been really impressive so far is Taylor McFarland, 2 goals so far this year. And really, I think one of the keys that the Jacket team has going for it this year, they brought back a lot of their key pieces and replaced some of the seniors from last year with some really impressive freshmen that are only going to get better as their time here continues.
If you had to choose one thing, just one main factor as to what this team needs to do to pick up a win and go above 500 on Wednesday, what are you choosing?
Right now, the one probably the biggest issue that the Jackets have, and wouldn't even call it a big issue, is they've struggled at times to move the ball from the defense into the attacking third, and that's done by connecting the ball through the midfield. They've been lacking in creativity a little bit in that area so far, and that's one thing that they really need to hone in on, be able to transition from the defense into the attack, provide options moving forward, And again, they've been able to score goals, so attacking hasn't been an issue, but just being able to reliably transition from the two stages of the game is going to be key moving forward.
Men's soccer, we're going to try to get above 500. Women's soccer already there at 2-1-1, winning at La Roche as well as against Mount Aloysius 3-0. So 3-2 La Roche, 3-0 Mount Aloysius. Pretty good start for the women's soccer team.
It has been, and again, the women's soccer team had a pretty impressive season last year, considering that it's the first year under a new coach and just a lot of new phases in the program. So they're really building on that, and they're getting a lot more results this year. They've been able to score a ton of goals, as you mentioned. And one thing, those goals are coming from everyone on the field. Grace Ingram, their center back, has managed to score 2 goals already coming from the defense. And if they can continue to get chances from people, not only the people in the attack, but also people in the back line and the midfield, that bodes very well for this Jacket offense.
They started off loss and tie to start the season, the women's soccer team did, but 2 wins in a row now to put them 2-1-1, and they're trying to start a little bit of a streak. Does that play any factor moving forward?
I think so, and a big factor in being able to start winning games after a slow start is they're not. It seems like they're not falling asleep in the middle of games at times. They gave up 2 goals in both of those early losses, very close to one another. And even though, again, La Roche managed to score 2 goals, they weren't back-to-back, and they were able to battle back into the game and come back and win it. And again, Mount Aloysius, just a dominant performance there. But that was to be expected. Mount Aloysius has struggled in recent years. But that aside, that performance was really impressive, and it bodes well for this team.
Micah Leith joining us here on Jacket Sports Weekly. Micah, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And we thank you for joining us here on this episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. For Brock Owens and our entire crew, I'm Austin Bechtold saying so long, and we'll see you next time for this week's Jacket Sports Weekly.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.